Good morning. It's Richard Hooke, conspiracy theorist Richard Hooke from California. And I just wanted to do a little bit more about Lee Harvey Oswald. This is part 4. I've already done 3 parts, but there's just a little bit more to cover, a little more detail. And so I wanted to make sure that we covered it completely to put a few more nails in the coffin of the U.S. government bullshit account about Oswald on November 22nd, 1963. So basically, this video here, it's going to cover Oswald from 12:40 p.m. On November 22nd when he's picked up by the Nash Rambler station wagon to 1:50 when he was arrested in the Texas Theater. Okay, so basically, Ruth Payne, CIA DIA, his light green Nash Rambler station wagon with chrome luggage rack and out-of-state plates containing Malcolm Wallace, who was O&I, DISC, Lee Oswald, CIA, O&I, FBI, Frank Sturgis, CIA, Mossad, the Rambler station wagon containing those guys, and Frank Sturgis's Latino driver sped away under the triple underpass at about 12:41. Okay, and they headed up onto the Stemmons Freeway, and they headed toward Parkland Hospital. Okay. Roughly 10 minutes behind our dead president, okay? The Rambler, it turned right on Oak Lawn Avenue and went down Oak Lawn to Holland Avenue and made a right onto Holland Avenue. Turned right down Holland and came until it came to a narrow and secluded driveway where it turned left, taxied in by some shrubbery and cheap student housing, and came to a stop at the top secret U.S. government DIA Holland Avenue safe house. So they had a safe house there on Holland Avenue where the TSPD 6th floor hit team had plotted their role in the assassination. And after the assassination, that's where the Rambler went immediately afterward. Okay, the Holland Avenue safe house manager, Rod McKenzie, a.k.a. Ward Alexander, who I've talked to dozens of times personally about these issues. He was a DISC asset, Chicago Mafia, and he was moved out to the Dallas Cabana Motel the final week so the safe house could be used by the TSPD 6th floor hit team of Malcolm Wallace, Ruth Ann Martinez, Loy Factor, Lee Oswald, Danny Arce, and Jack Ruby. To plan their role in the JFK hit at the Holland Avenue safe house. So while DISC asset McKenzie was staying at the Dallas Cabana Motel the final week before the hit, he made fake ID because he was a fake ID expert. He'd been trained by the CIA, and he made the fake ID for the 3 tramps. Okay, and Chauncey Holt came by to pick up that ID. That morning, November 22nd, 63, McKenzie gave Chauncey Holt the ID, and so McKenzie knew all 3 of the 3 tramps. He knew them personally, so we might as well just put that one to bed. The 3 tramps were Chauncey Holt, the tramp with a hat, Charles Frederick Rogers, the older one, and Charles Harrelson, the tall one with a shit-eating grin after he shot the president. Okay. So you have the 3 tramps, Holt, Rogers, and Harrelson. Those were the tramps. McKenzie knew them personally. He made the fake ID for them. So there's not any doubt about it. That's who the 3 tramps were. Okay. McKenzie's room at the Cabana was next to Ruth Ann Martinez, okay, the CIA hit lady who was Malcolm Wallace's communications lady on the 6th floor. Her room was next to McKenzie's at the Cabana, and his room was 2 doors down from Marita Lorenz and Frank Sturgis, who were both CIA, who the final night before the assassination, Sturgis and Lorenz, they met there. Jack Ruby came to his room, and also CIA bagman E. Howard Hunt, who Marita Lorenz testified in Mark Lane's Liberty Lobby trial, that Hunt paid Frank Sturgis a huge wad of cash to manage the CIA Grassy Knoll hit team operation behind the fence during the assassination. So E. Howard Hunt came by and gave Sturgis a huge wad of cash early that evening on November 21st to Sturgis at his motel room. And then additionally, after midnight, Mackenzie was at his desk 2 doors down, writing in a little diary he had there by the window in the cabana. And after midnight, he was at his desk and he witnessed a large black limo pull up and 2 thugs get out next to a man in a dark overcoat and hat with a distinctive upturned nose. And Mackenzie said there's no question about it. It was the unmistakable profile of Richard Milhouse Nixon. So Nixon came by Sturgis's motel room at the Cabana late that night, obviously after he'd been at Murchison's mansion to sign off on the hit with the other bigwig conspirators. Then Nixon came over in the dark limo to Sturgis's room, and he went into Sturgis's room for approximately half an hour, is what Mackenzie said. Nixon was in there, okay? And he obviously was the major player. Sturgis requested to give the go-ahead to shoot President Kennedy, and was being guaranteed by Nixon that there would be plenty of fake Secret Service agents on hand to turn people back from the grassy knoll. And Nixon was guaranteeing Sturgis that there'd be no return fire, because there wasn't any return fire, and nobody pursued the shooters that were all behind the picket fence and along the grassy knoll. They were just allowed to go away. The people were turned back with fake Secret Service agents with flip badges, which were made, by the way, at Chauncey Holt's fake ID badge company in Los Angeles, Lasco. And Chauncey Holt flew in like 15 of those fake Secret Service flip badges. They've been given the color code just a few days prior to the hit, and they made them special, and Chauncey Holt flew them in. So they had those badges there. The tramp with a hat brought them in. It was from his badge company. So Sturgis's Latino driver of the Nash Rambler at the Holland Avenue safe house gave Lee Oswald's back his keys to Ruth Payne's Nash Rambler wagon when it was parked at the Holland Avenue safe house. They turned the keys back to Oswald, and he quickly, Oswald changed into his dark pants. He quickly changed into his dark pants, which he had there, because he knew he was going to need them. They matched the police shirt hanging in J.D. Tippett's patrol car, as Oswald had been told by Jack Ruby to meet Tippett at Top 10 Records in Oak Cliff at 1 p.m., where Tippett was to drive Oswald to Redbird Airfield, where he'd be flown in Charles Frederick Rogers' CIA single-engine plane to Houston. And then Oswald was going to be transferred in Houston to David Ferry's twin-engine plane, and Ferry was going to fly Oswald over the Gulf to Mexico. At least that's what Oswald was told. He was led to believe that. Okay, so Oswald changed into his dark trousers at the Holland Avenue safe house, got in the Rambler, and headed back towards Oak Cliff by himself, driving the car. Okay, that was the plan. But the CIA actually had always planned to shoot Oswald and Tippett both. They had planned to shoot them both. Okay, that's what people need to understand about what was going on at 10th and Patton. They had planned to shoot out where Oswald would be blamed for shooting Tippett, but Oswald really couldn't shoot anyone because he'd been given a broken gun by Ruby at 12:40. And Gary Marlowe, CIA, was to shoot Tippett, and Roscoe White was to shoot Oswald. That's the way it was going to work. Of course, what happened was Oswald, having second thoughts, went to the theater instead. And so Gary Marlowe, CIA, shot Tippett 3 times in the chest, and he fell to the street and rolled over on his back. And Roscoe White shot Tippett in his right temple while he was down to make sure J.D. was dead. And they hustled J.D. Onto Air Force Two, okay? They hustled him onto Air Force Two, and the CIA had Tippett made up as a substitute corpse for JFK at Bethesda. So they'd have a corpse that made it look like JFK was shot from the rear by a lone nut, when really that wasn't the case at all. Actually, they didn't shoot him like they wanted to, so they had to blow his head off from the front, and they destroyed the corpse, basically, They needed another one. That's what they realized, and so they definitely needed to get Tippit, and that was the plan. And it always was the plan to shoot Oswald and Tippit at 10th and Patton, but Oswald didn't show, so they took care of Tippit anyway. And you know that for sure when you see Roscoe White coming around when Tippit had already been shot 3 times, shooting him a 4th time to make sure he's dead, so they didn't have to waste any time, nobody trying to revive Tippit, so that he'd be declared dead quickly, and hustled on to Air Force 2. Okay. So anyway, Lee Oswald drove Mrs. Payne's Nash Rambler station wagon by himself from the Holland Avenue safe house in Dallas over to Oak Cliff, where Oswald parked by the Tidy Lady Laundrette, okay, where Oswald was witnessed just prior to 1 p.m. making a phone call on the payphone in front of the laundrette, and Oswald was speaking kind of excitedly in Spanish. Oswald was witnessed by the laundrette by the Penningtons, who said Oswald drove in alone and was wearing his distinctive brown overshirt jacket. So he was there at the laundrette. The Penningtons said Oswald finished the phone call, abandoned the Rambler station wagon, and walked off in the direction of the Texas Theater. So Oswald was totally across town from 10th and Patton, walking from the laundrette to the theater, which was in between the laundrette and 10th and Patton. So he didn't go to 10th and Patton. He was going to the theater. That's where he went. And Top 10 Records actually was right by the theater, which was Plan A, that Oswald would meet Tippit there. But he had second thoughts, Oswald, and that's probably why he was talking excitedly to his handler in Spanish at the laundrette, because he said, I'm not going for it. He had feelings that they were going to shoot him, and he was right. They were. So Oswald went to the theater instead, which was Plan B. Okay. And the Penningtons at the laundrette said that the man was Oswald, definitely the same man they saw that night on television. Okay. Okay. Oswald, he was witness in the Texas Theater just prior to 1:10 p.m., approximately the same time J.D. Tippit was killed across town by Gary Marlowe and Roscoe White of the CIA. Oswald was witness entering the theater by Butch Burroughs at approximately 1:08, the theater concessionaire, and Oswald was witness prior to 1:20 by Jack Davis, who was a theater patron and sitting next to Oswald in the lower level as they were both watching the movie previews. So he was witnessed by 2 people before the fake Oswald was run into the theater at a little after 1:30. Oswald was already witnessed in the theater there. And the conspirators quickly realized Oswald had not met Tippit at Top 10 Records at 1 p.m. like he was supposed to, but instead had opted for Plan B, which was to go to the theater and wait in the lower level for an FBI contact, okay, which was very possibly his handler, Warren DeBruys, okay. He was waiting for him, but DeBruys never showed, and Oswald was just left hung out to dry in the theater. At approximately 1:30, Jack Ruby had his personal secretary, Larry Crayford, impersonate Oswald by running into the Texas Theater without paying in an undershirt and sit in the balcony, run up into the balcony and sit in order to provide the police provocation to enter and arrest Lee Oswald downstairs. So the police had been informed by Jack Ruby that Oswald just had a broken pistol, and so they were unafraid as they entered from the alley behind the stage, walked up the aisles. As the lights were flipped on, the police piled on top of Oswald, who wrestled around just enough while he was yelling, "I am not resisting arrest." He squirmed around to all the people who were watching the theater. And so the police were unable to get a bead on Oswald. Actually, there was a guy over the top of the pile with a shotgun who was trying to shoot Oswald, but he shifted around. They were unable to get a bead on him, and so they had to just arrest him. They weren't able to shoot him. And they actually had hoped in the beginning that he would run out the back, try and escape in the alley, and they would have shot him there. But he was too smart for that. He stayed put, and then they piled on him, and he said, "I'm not resisting arrest," and squirmed just enough. And so he was a pretty smart guy. He didn't get shot there. He didn't get shot there either. So they took him alive. They took Oswald alive, which really was definitely what they did not want to do, because Oswald knew all the major players. So they really had a nightmare on their hands at that point. They arrested Oswald and took him out front, the front doors of the theater, as they took the Oswald impersonator Larry Crayford out the back door and hustled him into a police car in the alley. Okay. When Oswald was taken out of the theater at 1:50 p.m., he had on the same brown overshirt he had on in the TSBD doorway at 12:30. We can see the pictures when he was leaving the theater, and we've analyzed the picture in the doorway. It's the same overshirt. And so we know Oswald was never at 10th and Patton. There was nobody there in an overshirt jacket like that. Nobody like that at all. Gary Marlowe was a much taller guy than Oswald. He had on a white jacket. Didn't look like him at all. And Roscoe White was short and stocky. So there was nobody there like Oswald, and certainly nobody in a brown overshirt. Actually, even if Oswald had a white jacket over the brown overshirt coat, which you wouldn't put two coats on, it would have been hanging down to his thighs, because the white Eisenhower jacket that Marlowe wore was waist cut. So one of the people with the descriptions would have said that there was a brown overshirt hanging way out of the white Eisenhower jacket, which nobody described that. So we know Oswald wasn't there. He was never at 10th and Patton. That's the key. Okay? So in a police car in front of the theater, the police confiscated Oswald's wallet containing his driver's license and dropped it at 10th and Patton to frame him in a classic frame for the murder of J.D. Tippit. Oswald's driver's license was removed from the inventory of the wallet once the conspirators decided they were going to claim Oswald was a lone nut assassin of President Kennedy who could not drive a car. So that's the way that went down. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.